finalists. We'll get to that in a second. But Jim Williams, who will join us here in 15 minutes, had this earlier today. None of this is actually like breaking news, but what he is saying is that I can confirm this morning regarding Pac-12 media deal is that Apple TV Plus wants the entire Tier 1 package and would use then the Pac-12 network as their production arm. Prime Video still there for a possible Friday night game. The linear partner remains the holdup. And, of course, anything can happen, as we've seen. And so there's Jim Williams. He'll kind of come on and he'll be on with us in about 15 minutes to kind of go over this a little bit. Brian and Sam and Jim and Bob, among others, have kind of discussed options, but that was from Jim Williams from earlier today.
Well, if the entire Tier 1 is going to go to Apple TV Plus, if I'm a linear partner, I'm wondering what I'm going to get out of that or how much money I have to pay Apple to get some of those games, right? Because Tier 1's the best games. That's the best stuff that you're going to have. So when you're talking about the future of the Pac-12, that Oregon and Washington game that the Pac-12 is going to want to pump up, well, are they going to sell? Is Apple TV going to want to sell that back to a linear partner, or are they going to want Oregon and Washington on Apple TV Plus? Because that's one of the best games coming up in the new Pac-12, correct? So those marquee games, those big-time ones, are it's going to be interesting to see. So that's why I would hold up on a linear partner. But it seems to me right now that if this is the deal they have and linear kind of comes later, I mean, it would be kind of inverse. Like, just theoretically, let's say that, Tier 1 is all Apple TV Plus, Prime Video on a Friday night game, and then Tier 3, instead of being all online, like the Tier 3 things are for every other conference, like the Big 12 and SEC, then Tier 3 is now in the CW or someone like that. That could be what you have to do linear, and then throwing CW a Prime game once in a while. But overall, I think Apple TV Plus, if that's what they want, and this is a very Apple move. Apple doesn't want things secondarily. They want it all or they want none of it. And that's if they can get it. Now, Major League Baseball is a different thing, but you're talking about a different organization.
Craig, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my Oklahoma thing, they hosted Cincinnati in 2008, and then they played at Cincy in 2010. So I knew that was somewhat recently, and so, yeah, that'll be the last time, but 13 years apart from the last and only trip to Oklahoma, or only trip for Oklahoma to Cincinnati. So that'll make that a big deal this year. As far as the streaming Apple Pac-12 story goes, I mean, that's not incredibly surprising, I guess. I mean, I think if you're Apple and you're involved, you'd want the best games. I think it's been known all along that, Apple's been probably the most consistent name involved with the Pac-12 rights negotiations at this point. I mean, others have flown in and out, Ion or the ESPN networks, CW. I mean, let's face it, everybody basically has been rumored at one point or another, and some have stuck around for longer rumors, and some have just faded away or made their plans known that they're not going to pursue it, or whatever. We've kind of known, but Apple's been sort of that one consistent. So I don't know. I've kind of resigned myself to they're going to have some piece of it, and whatever that looks like. If it's Tier 1, that'll be obviously very interesting. With Paul, of course, if you're Apple, you want the best games, and I think it's one thing when it's Major League Baseball, but if we're talking a single college football conference, I mean, there's only so much to select from there, and I don't know that if you're Apple, you're diving in so that every Friday night you get Cal and Arizona. Like, I don't think that's you want on occasion USC or all the time, Oregon, Washington. Obviously, USC won't be a part of it, but you want those brand names. You want Utah, I'd imagine. So, yeah, I think there's going to be as much haggling over who gets what as anything else, but it seems as though there's at least some zeroing in, I guess, on part of this deal. It's certainly taken them long enough. We've blown past the quote-unquote deadline. Now we're talking, end of May or early summertime. So, I mean, at some point, something's got to give. And the longer we go on, we're getting closer to that point. And, here we are a year out. So maybe things are starting to come together for them. And maybe this stops the expansion rumors and all that. I doubt it, but interesting to note.
All right, we got to get to some other stories. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to throw this out, and I want your opinion on this, both of you. What if one of the holdups on this and because this can happen to human beings in just the walk of life, the Pac-12 knows itself to be one thing for a very long time, right? They're the Pac-12 and they are this conference. And then USC and UCLA leave, and while they know that, they know the reality of them leaving, they haven't accepted the reality of what they are without them in their own minds.
The Big 12 realized it quickly and had to, and they reacted immediately.
But, I mean, you can see how the timetables have been so different because the Big 12 did realize it and moved on. The Big 12 realized it when it happened the first time.
Yeah.
Like, without A&M and Nebraska and all that.
What's the question?
But do you think that might be part of it? You've got leaders that are in there that have not completely...
I would think so.
Based on some of the fans? Yeah, absolutely. There's leaders like that.
I think some of them have not come to grips yet, and they still feel like they're just as powerful no matter who is in the conference because there's just that it's just kind of that aura. And you know, I don't think that was ever the case. There's a few fan bases or maybe a school or two in the Big 12 once Texas and Oklahoma story pop where you thought we're going to the Big 10 or whatever. None of that ever happened, no matter what the speculation was. I think everyone understood, oh my God, we need to be together here and make this quick. We don't have time to mess around and have our feelings hurt. Let's get something done, and they did.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, and I don't paint the Pac-12 fan bases with a broad brush, but like everybody, they've got theirs that stink, or theirs that are a bit more arrogant, and there's certainly been at least a small portion of Pac-12 voices, I guess, that have absolutely carried on this entire time with this air of superiority that comes from I don't know what, but there's definitely an element of that I think is a part of the leadership's mindset, and I think that this whole process is hopefully, I guess, brought some back to reality a little bit, but I don't know with people. So maybe that's still a problem for them, but sure, that could absolutely be a part of what's been a little bit of the delay.
I got to